It begins with a whisper from the past, the murmur of a crowd in the Athenian agora, sandals scraping stone, voices echoing off marble columns. In this ancient world where democracy was born, reputation was everything. Your honor, your body, your name. They weren't yours alone. They belonged to the city. And when that city decided you had stepped out of line, punishment didn't just mean pain or death. It meant something far worse. It meant humiliation. Welcome to the channel, where we uncover the hidden history of sex, power, and punishment across the ages. Today, we are rediving into the most humiliating punishments of ancient Greece, the ones you probably never learned about in school. Imagine living in a world where to lose face in public was to lose everything. Ancient Greece wasn't a land of private shame, it was a society built on visibility. Everyone was always watching, your neighbors, your rivals, even the gods. To be humiliated wasn't simply to be punished, it was to be erased from respectability. This was a culture obsessed with honor and balance, where even your physical posture could signal virtue or disgrace. And when punishment came, it wasn't hidden behind prison walls. It was performed for all to see. The crowd wasn't just an audience, they were part of the justice. Public shaming was one of the most powerful tools in the Greek justice system. If someone stole, lied, or betrayed trust, they could be paraded through the streets stripped of their clothing, or forced to perform acts designed to remind everyone of their wrongdoing. To the Greeks, the body was not just flesh, it was moral theater. A nude athlete in the gymnasium represented beauty and discipline, but a nude criminal in the marketplace represented failure, a fallen citizen exposed and powerless. Some punishments targeted the body, others targeted the soul. A debt could turn a man into a spectacle. Insolvent debtors might be marked, their heads shaved, or forced to wear distinctive signs, symbols of their shame. In some city-states, habitual liars or slanderers were compelled to stand before the assembly and publicly confess their falsehoods. For citizens of Athens, where speech was power, this was the deepest cut of all. You could lose your ability to speak in public, to vote, even to address your peers. Your voice, the very instrument of democracy, was silenced. Yet perhaps the most fascinating punishments were those that blurred the line between justice and performance. The Greeks loved the idea of balance, of poetic irony. A thief might be forced to repay his debt not in money, but in mockery. An adulterer might be humiliated in a way that mirrored his offense. The punishment always had to fit the crime, not only in severity, but in symbolism. This wasn't just justice, it was narrative. And the public humiliation was the punchline. As the camera of history pans forward, we see that some of the most humiliating punishments weren't always written in law. They lived in custom, ritual, and rumor. Take the case of the adulterer, the man caught sleeping with another's wife. In Athens, this wasn't merely scandalous, and it was a civic crime. The husband had the right, even the duty, to avenge his household's honor. Yet killing wasn't the only option. The law allowed the wronged man to humiliate his rival instead, turning vengeance into spectacle. One of the most infamous rituals was known as the radish punishment. The adulterer, captured and bound, might be subjected to the insertion of a radish or fishtail as a mark of degradation, a grotesque inversion of masculinity, and a permanent stain on his reputation. Modern audiences often gasp at this, but to the ancient Greeks the act wasn't about pain, it was about hierarchy. To be penetrated was to be symbolically feminized, and in their rigid social code, that meant dishonor for a free citizen. The radish, crude as it sounds, was a social message carved in flesh. It declared that the man who once took what wasn't his had been reduced to the lowest status imaginable, an object of ridicule. He might survive the ordeal, but his reputation never would. Other punishments played with gender and status as well. Certain offenses could strip a man of his citizen rights and brand him with the label of adimos, dishonored. Once marked, he could no longer hold office, vote, or even enter the sacred spaces reserved for men of standing. It was a kind of social death. In a world where masculinity and civic power were intertwined, losing one meant losing both. A man without honor was like a body without a name, alive but invisible. Humiliation could also be collective. In the Spartan system, cowardice was the ultimate disgrace. A man who fled the battlefield was not executed. That would have been too simple. Instead, he was made to live, branded as a coward. He might be forced to wear a cloak of patchwork colors, half-length beards, or even shaved spots, all visible markers of shame. Women mocked them in public. Children avoided their gaze. Their punishment wasn't a single event, but a lifetime of silent stares and whispered insults. Sparta understood something chilling. That shame lasts longer than pain. And not all humiliations were inflicted by men upon men. Women, too, lived under the constant possibility of public shame. Adultery for a woman wasn't just a moral failing. It was pollution, a stain on her entire household. A caught adulteress might have her hair shaved, her clothes torn, or be paraded before her neighbors as a living warning. But there was something even more striking: the way Greek culture eroticized and moralized the female body simultaneously. A woman's modesty was her virtue, yet her exposure was her punishment. In this contradiction lay the cruel genius of Greek humiliation. It turned the body into both weapon and victim. The story deepens when we look at how these punishments intertwined with religion. The Greeks believed that shame didn't just offend people, it offended the gods. A person who committed a moral crime such as incest or sacrilege might undergo purification rituals that were themselves forms of humiliation. They could be publicly bathed, scrubbed with ashes, or forced to wear signs declaring their impurity until absolved. In some temples, those accused of impiety were required to kneel before statues, confess their offenses aloud, and beg forgiveness in view of the congregation. This wasn't mercy, it was theater. The gods might forgive, but the people never forgot. Perhaps the most symbolic humiliation of all came through ostracism, the democratic exile of a citizen by vote. To be ostracized wasn't a brutal punishment, it was a psychological one. Your name was written on shards of pottery, ostraca, and if enough citizens agreed, you were banished from Athens for 10 years. No chains, no blood, no spectacle, but the sting of public rejection. Imagine standing in the agora, watching as thousands of hands cast their votes, each one a whisper of contempt. Your fame turned to infamy. Your face turned away from the city that once cheered you. Ostracism was the perfect Greek punishment, clean, public, and devastating to the ego. And yet, beneath the civility of democracy, there always lurked a taste for the dramatic. Comic poets and playwrights mocked criminals and politicians alike, dragging their reputations through the mud for entertainment. Aristophanes' plays were full of sexual jokes and ridicule that could destroy a man's image overnight. Public laughter was a weapon sharper than any sword. In a society where respect meant survival, ridicule was death by laughter. But humiliation in Greece wasn't only about individuals, it was also about maintaining order in the body politic. Every public punishment reinforced a lesson about power: who had it, who didn't, and what happened when someone crossed the line. Enslaved people bore the harshest end of the spectrum. They could be branded, flogged, or paraded as living warnings to others. Some bore tattoos on their foreheads, inscribed with their master's name or their crime. To be tattooed was to lose control over your own body. To become a text others could read. For free citizens, tattoos were abhorrent, a mark of servility. Yet for slaves, they were inescapable identity papers written in flesh. Still, even free citizens could face similar degradations if they defied the norms of sexuality and decorum. Men accused of prostitution or of taking a submissive sexual role could be stripped of citizenship rights, forbidden from speaking in the assembly, or barred from serving in religious functions. These laws didn't just punish acts, they policed identities. Greek masculinity was a fragile performance, and humiliation was the price of breaking character. Punishment also extended into death. Executions in ancient Greece were often less spectacular than in Rome, but their symbolism could still humiliate. A traitor's body might be denied burial, the ultimate insult in a culture obsessed with honor among the dead. To rot unburied was to be erased from memory, denied the dignity of remembrance. It was as if the gods themselves turned their faces away. And then there were the small humiliations, the social punishments that didn't require a court at all. The Greeks were masters of ridicule. Mockery was their social glue. A man known for greed or cowardice might find himself lampooned in songs sung at banquets or carved into graffiti on walls. Women, too, could be targets of gossip that functioned as soft punishment. In this sense, every Greek city was its own theater of humiliation, and every citizen, actor, and audience alike. When you step back, you start to see the pattern. Punishment in ancient Greece wasn't about justice in the modern sense. It was about balance, spectacle, and control. It was about making an example, turning one body's suffering into another's lesson. Whether through laughter, ridicule, or exposure, shame was the invisible chain that held society together, and that, perhaps, is the most unsettling truth of all. Because when you strip away the marble and myth, ancient Greece begins to look uncomfortably familiar. Public shaming didn't disappear with the agora, it just moved online. Today, viral scandals and cancel culture echo the same impulses, the same fascination with humiliation as justice. We still watch, we still judge, we still punish with shame. Only now the crowd is global, and the punishment never fades. So as we leave behind the temples and theaters of Greece, take a moment to think about what those punishments reveal. They weren't just cruelty for cruelty's sake. They were mirrors, reflecting what a society feared most about itself. For the Greeks, that fear was disorder, weakness, and loss of control. Their humiliations were rituals of containment, symbolic performances that kept the social body pure. But every act of public shaming also betrayed a secret, that the boundary between the punished and the punisher was always thinner than it seemed. If you've stayed with us to the end, thank you for exploring this darker side of history. Ancient Greece gave us philosophy, democracy, and art, but also a reminder that civilization and cruelty often share the same stage. Which punishment shocked you the most? Tell us in the comments below. And if you enjoy uncovering the secret sexual and social histories of the ancient world, from rituals of purity to punishments of shame, don't forget to subscribe. There's much more history hidden beneath the marble waiting to be revealed.